And one. Thank you for tuning in to Trenton Talks on WIMG 1300 AM. Yours truly, I'm your host, Gerald Truehart, board member, chair of the Policy Committee and Family Community Engagement Committee. We have a special guest on today. Of course, we have our board president, Addie Lane, our acting superintendent, Alfonso Llano, our assistant superintendent of school support, Wilfredo Ortiz, and our special guest to this afternoon is our business administrator, board secretary, Jayne Howard. She did an excellent presentation at our board meeting last night to go over our 21-22 budget. And today, our broadcast is focused on our budget for next year. And so Addie Lane will start off our broadcast. Addie.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and certainly thanks to WIMG for, again, allowing us to have this particular time slot. It's budget time. And of course, the budget process is a very involved process. And so both our superintendent, Alfonso Llano, and our business administrator, who also happens to be the board secretary, actually leads that process along with our school administrators, our school principals, and so on and so forth. And so we're just going to let them tell you about the process and how it works. So if you would, Superintendent Llano, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for the invitation to be here on WIMG Trenton Talks. It's pretty cool today that we are going to be changing the focus a little bit and talking about our budget, the budget that we prioritize all of our initiatives around as we go looking towards the future. This year, with the leadership team, our school leaders, our community members, our Board of Education, we identified a couple of priorities, district priorities that were aligned to our strategic plan. The priorities that we focused on are student achievement, parent-community partnership engagement, developing the whole child, staff development and well-being, and facilities and infrastructure, including security. So we took those 5 areas, which were identified through the strategic planning process, and used them to really unpack what our school budget and our district budget should look like. So that process was led by our business administrator and our assistant superintendents, who helped support all of our school leaders to really redefine and narrow down what their process and what their school budgets would look like. Again, we wanted to make sure that we were always focusing our school budget on academic rigor, what our programs are doing for our students, and then really keeping in mind a portrait of a graduate, what our graduates what we expect them to be able to achieve in high school and do in their post-secondary life. And again, guided by the business team, smart purchasing, how we purchase and use our funds and get that return on investment, right? That return on investment is essential to make sure that we are making sound investments. And again, our responsibility as a school district, our social responsibility to support our students to become learners and active, committed members of our community. And again, we also want to make sure that we are really investing around cutting edge education, and innovations in all of our schools. So we outlined our district priorities, we made our commitments, and then we unpacked what our school budget would look like, but really focusing on our curriculum and our program and needs for the 21-22 school year. Now, Ms. Howard, she put together the process that we would follow. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Howard to describe how we ended up building that budget based off of the district priorities and our commitments. Ms. Howard.
Good evening. I'm really honored to be here today to be on the radio station with WIMG. My name is Jayne Howard, and I am the School Business Administrator Board Secretary at Trenton Public Schools. And I believe this is maybe my first time on this year. So I'm really excited about that. As our acting superintendent stated, we have a $383 million budget. So this was a long process, but a happy process, because we had money, right? Which we received from our federal government, the state, and from the city. The budget process is a really long, tedious process if it's done correctly, because remember, our little people, our children, are always at the core. So we always have to think about what is best for them, and everyone else is a byproduct of that. So first thing we do is get our blueprint, which is from the board and the superintendent. And that blueprint helps us build the budget. Because first thing we have to do is align student needs with the available resources. What do we have? I always say that the plan is the car, whether it's a Hyundai, a Honda, a Cadillac, Bentley, but the budget is the gas. So your car cannot run without gas. So we have to be intertwined, right? We're not separate and apart. We have to work together to ensure that whatever product we come up with, number one, the focus is to make sure that it supports our staff, teachers, parents, and most importantly, our child. So this year, you really start the process in July because you're looking at everything that you've done the prior year and say, you know what, I want to make sure I have a tickler list and say, I want to make sure this is placed in the budget for the upcoming school year. And when you look at it, you put it in 4 buckets. Okay, critical. Like when you go to the hospital, you're in critical condition. We have to have this. Then what's essential? Okay, then what's needed, and then desired. So desired, we put kind of on the back burner to make sure that all our priorities are met, everything that the board, because the board sets the parameters. They say, this is what I want. And then the superintendent is, okay, this is how we're going to get there. Okay, he's the how and they're the what. So from that, we have our budget goals, which is we focus on ensuring that every possible dollar is invested in our student needs. So how do you do that? Every school, led by their principal and the school leadership team, puts together a plan. And that plan should be their blueprint. And that's how, and they're looking at their data, which is also their blueprint. And that's how they should focus on preparing their budget. Then they have to look at how can they empower their staff to grow through professional development. They also need to look at how do they thoughtfully, and that's the key word, realign their resources. Because what we don't want to do is keep compounding every year, the same thing, the same thought process, but we're really not hitting that target. And then we have to continue identifying efficiency improvements. Because about 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, we didn't have the funding coming in like we do now. So we had to always make sure that we had excess surplus to be able to turn this budget over. Because if we go back and look 10 years ago and 11 years ago, when this funding formula came in, they focused on expanding what was said before, which we were former Abbott and we're a type 1 district. Okay, so then after 2010, all Abbott districts went away. So they said everyone would be funded the same way. One shoe fits all. It's just that if you were former Abbott, you receive adjustment aid, where no other district, your Hamiltons and your other districts, they didn't receive that aid. And then they said, let's expand on needy. Prior, you didn't have your Willingboro's and things of that nature. They didn't receive the funding that we received. So then they start receiving more funding. So they said, okay, Jayne, you look like your other districts, but you have certain needs because you're at risk, which is paras and kindergarten classes, which they don't have in our other suburban districts or Hamilton or Ewing. They said also, you have to make sure that you have to provide breakfast for all of your students because you're at risk, which our other districts do not have to do. You have to make sure that you look within your budget in certain other priorities that the state said that we have to have that's mandated through our efficiency standards. It's only for your former Abbott districts. Whereas Mr. Truehart, he's in Lawrence, so that's not a former Abbott districts. So he don't have the same mandates that we have. So from that, we look at the overall picture, and then my team then put together a mock budget for every school and say, okay, this is where we are. This is what the amount is. And this is the amount, either surplus or a deficit for that year. The superintendent takes a look at it. And then from there, we really start building. Okay, this is what this team gave us. Then this is what we need to look at to make sure it meets, as the superintendent stated, our district priorities, which is student achievement, parental community partnerships, developing the whole child, which is very important, staff development, and the facilities infrastructure. And as we're building that budget and we're looking at our state aid, which is the bulk of our money, then we're looking at SPED. Okay, how can we ensure that all of our students in the special education department is receiving a thorough and efficient education, even though the state is not paying us 100%? we have to make sure that their education is 100%. Looking at our bilingual students, looking at our regular ed students and say, okay, we have to build the budget for them, each one separately, right? Then we have to look at, okay, our transportation for all of these students. Okay, look at our social and emotional needs that they need for all of our students. And then what are the other consistent things that are in the school? Social worker, nurse, parent liaison, paras for your SPED classes, things of that nature to make sure all of our schools may not be equal, but they're equitable. And that's what we look at. And then to make sure that this is a student-based budget based on the unique blend of our students. And when it's built, that is student-friendly, and our percentages show that. And it's not a staff-friendly budget, because as I said, they're a byproduct, it's a student-friendly budget. Then we also enhance our budget by looking at the Title I funding that we receive and make sure we're using that as a supplement and not as a supplant. Because every mandate, or if it's core, we have to ensure that we're providing that through our regular state funding, and that the grant funding is a supplement, which sometimes is very hard to do because, you know, it's a gray area. Are you supplanting or is it a supplement? So we need to make sure then we're writing plans for that, and they also align to our district priorities. Then we look at the 23 million that we get from our state, because that's also included. So you have the state piece, city piece, and you have the federal piece. And that whole amount equals to 383 million. And I know it seems like, oh, that's a lot of money. So we should be able to do X, Y, and Z and all of these wonderful things, which we can. But remember, the bulk of our money still goes to salaries and benefits. 75% regardless goes to salaries and benefits, because all of our staff members are in a union. So they all get their increments. But our students, we have to ensure that we're their union. So we have to make sure they get everything they need also to be successful. So in this budget, we have many, many, many investments. I won't go over all of them, but certain ones I would like to talk about, where our superintendent can talk about, is our learning loss teachers, which is very important, which we're putting in grades 1 through 3rd grade. And feel free to chime in, Superintendent Llano. Our instructional supplies for our learning loss teachers, technology specialists for middle schools, the expansion of our special education program, expansion of our bilingual programs. And what we're really excited about is the implementation of a G&T program, enrichment program, which is, I believe we tried it 2 or 3 years ago, but we're very excited about this. The grade level would be, I believe, 2 through 5th grade, or maybe 1 through 5th grade. But we're going to ensure that that program is built correctly under the direction of Michael Toff and our superintendent, and we give those students everything they need to be successful. We're going to also expand on our professional development, our technology services, youth-based, school-based youth services in our middle and high schools. Currently, they're just in Trenton Central High School, Maine, and we would like to expand to 9th grade academy, TRA, in our middle schools, which are Dunn, Riviera, Kilmer, and Hedgepeth Williams. We also would like to expand our nursing services for our wellness rooms, because our district will be opening up on May 3rd. And we know that we need to have a wellness room and make sure that our students and staff are secure. So we're going to bring in additional nursing services for that, launch our parent university, implement programs for our adult learners. That's also very exciting, because I believe 3 years ago, we had an adult school, but the state, the money was no longer awarded to us in the last 3 years, but we're able to bring that program back, expand on our custodial support and our mechanic and laborers. So as you see, we really, really did bring investments in the district in every component, in the educational piece, social and emotional, upgrading our facilities, security piece. And we're also going to look at bringing in a new finance and HR system, which is going to be more efficient, that's real time. So I believe, yes.
before the superintendent explains and goes and elaborates on some of the initiatives, you mentioned two important words. You said supplanting. And I don't know if our parents really, or if many people understand, what do we mean by supplanting and why that's an important piece as we do a budget. And the other,
Sure.
you mentioned an Abbott district. I don't
Yes,
know if our parents know what an Abbott district is. Okay.
sure.
Explain those two.
Okay, in 2008, from 1998 to 2008, Trenton was one of the 31 Abbott districts, which meant that in our suburban district, the achievement gap was here, right? So they wanted to close the achievement gap and say, okay, we're going to give you more money to bring in more mandates to help your test scores. Hopefully, then your test scores will meet the money that you're receiving. So for 10 years, we had additional funding that our suburban counterparts did not receive, just the 31 Abbott districts. So in 2008, they then looked at another funding formula because your districts like your Willingboro's and so forth, they were saying, well, we may not have as many students as some of the other districts, but we believe that we're at the same poverty level because we were a district factoring group A, right? We were all A. And, you know, we don't have ratables. So they said, so we believe that we should be a part of that funding also. So they looked at us and they said, you know what? Even though you receive more money, maybe your test scores didn't improve the way we wanted them to, not just Trenton, all of our Abbott districts. So now we're going to bring in Success for All, which is a new funding formula, right? Where it's one size fits all. But if you're at risk, you receive additional funding. So, okay, what do I mean by that? Okay, every former Abbott district under this new funding formula, if it was funded 100%, which would have been the first year, right? We were all at -2%, which is telling you, okay, there was something wrong. We were receiving much more money prior. So the state said no one can be at a negative. So they gave us adjustment aid. And yesterday when I spoke about our state aid, it was 20 million there that was adjustment aid. But that was supposed to hold us harmless for 3 years, but we still have it like 5 years later. They never removed that from our base. That was our adjustment aid. So then they took our security aid and gave us $70 per child. Transportation aid, which is if you're remote, over 2 miles for elementary, 2.5 miles for secondary. And these are our mandates from the state. Then our special education aid, which is a ceiling, which said you cannot classify over 15%. If you do, you will eat the additional costs. We're only going to give you 15.4% of your student enrollment for special ed. And then our equalization aid, which is our per pupil amount. In that amount, you also got extra money for being at risk, which means if you were LEP and things of that nature. So that's pretty much what we went from Abbott, former Abbott, now to Success for All, and all of us are under the same funding formula.
Okay, thank you.
Whether you're Abbott or not.
And Jayne, as we're under this funding formula for the last couple of years, and we're actually doing pretty good this year with over $30-something million increase from the prior year. Superintendent Llano, a question for you. How does the strategic plan kind of make its way into this first year? But I know we just approved our strategic plan starting next year for our 5 years and ending in 2026. But can you just kind of give us an explanation of how the strategic plan and this budget are synced up together so that we can project ourselves into the future and complete our strategic plan successfully?
Absolutely. So one of the critical things that we did early on as we started the strategic planning process is we made sure that we aligned our efforts with the budget development process to make sure that all of the initiatives and objectives and goal statements that we were preparing were aligned and embedded within our school budget. Many districts have made large and big, bold promises in their strategic plans, but they forgot the most important piece, which was planning and preparation within the school district budget, right? So if you don't have it budgeted for in your plan for the following year, you're not going to realize that you're going to have to wait another year. So we made sure to do both processes at the same time. We developed our budget We looked at the strategic plan, large areas that we were going to focus on: our student achievement, our parent community engagement, our developing the whole child, our infrastructures, and also our staff development. We took those 5 areas and we made sure they were the district priorities in the budget development process. So when we came up with, let's say, under facilities, we looked at in year 1, we want to begin the process to install air conditioners in many of our elementary schools. We looked at the budget on with Ms. Howard, with the facilities team, and we looked at, all right, how can we embed it in year 1? How many schools can we accomplish? How many schools can we get to in year 2? How can we work through this process and make sure these improvements are embedded and actionable? Without the funding, you're kind of dead in the water. We also looked at like student achievement. One of the big areas we wanted to work on was how do we improve programs for our students? Gifted and Talented is a program that has for many years eluded our school district. And now we have an opportunity where we have a solid program proposal and it's developed with curriculum, a framework, a schedule, a plan for staffing, and a building that was developed by Mr. Toft, his team, and his committee, along with the acting superintendent, myself, the assistant superintendents. And we also then matched that up to the budget development process. What's it going to take to fund 5 teachers, a principal for that site, a custodian to be able to monitor and manage the building? What will it cost us to transport students? The selection and identification criteria for the magnet program, are there any costs associated with that? And training for teachers on some of the tools that we're going to be using. We took all of those pieces, and it took a lot of time and a lot of work to really develop those and place them inside of our school budget under instructional supplies or professional development or staffing or facilities. So we married both processes together, making sure, because we put so much time in that strategic plan, we want to make sure that we can nail it. And Jayne kept on telling us, if you're not talking to me about these, you better make sure it's in the budget. Make sure it's in the budget. Talk to us and give us some numbers. And I think we did a great job with that, you know, all along our 5 different district priorities and our 5 focus areas.
Next question from Addie Lane. You're muted.
Well, I know Ortiz needed me to answer supplement and supplant. I didn't answer that piece for him also.
All right, we'll circle
Okay,
back.
go ahead, and then I'll jump in.
Okay, Ortiz, a supplement is build upon, right? You add to. Supplant means you're replacing something, you're taking the place of, which means if we have literacy and math leaders that's in our district budget, then I can't supplant and put them in grant funding. So remember, one is build upon and the other supplant is to replace, to take the place of. That's the difference between the 2.
Thank you. Just wanted our parents to understand that.
Okay.
Okay, and so my question is this: we have a $383 million budget. So where does the funding come from? Where do we get our pockets of funds for that $383 million?
Okay, our funding comes from 3 different sources. Okay, our state aid, which is 75% of our budget, right? So of course, the bulk of the money came from state aid. 6% of our funding comes from the city, which is 23 million. That's 6% of our funding. 75% is state aid. Another 5% came from excess surplus, which is money over and above the 2% that is mandated by law that you have to have after every audit. You have to have 2% mandated by law that really the state keeps as pretty much their bank account. Even though it's our money, they keep that 2%. For us, that's about $5 to $6 million. Okay, so then we had excess funding of about 5%, and our grants is 13%. So that makes up the 100% of our funding.
Okay, thank you. And then just a follow-up question. So what does a typical, let's just say, pick a school, what does a typical school budget look like? Is it 3 million, 4 million, 5 million? What does a typical school budget look like?
A typical elementary school budget is around 4 million, which around 3 million, 3.5, which the bulk of their monies, probably 80%, 75 to 80% would be staffing and benefits. Your staff and your benefits, right? Because they just increase every year. And then your non-salary piece is probably about, which is your general supplies, your textbooks, purchase professional development and things of that nature. That's probably about 10-20% of your budget. $375 per child. But the bulk of it is staffing and benefits.
Okay, all right.
So it's about, now that's elementary. Middle school, it's about $5 to $6 million, right? And then high school, our high school budget is 20 million. Main campus is $20 million. Ninth grade academy is $8 million, ninth grade academy. And then you have a daylight and TRA combined is about 3.5 million.
Okay, thank you. So that just gives the public a figure in terms of when we're
Right.
thinking schooling, how does the funding break down? How are schools supported? And again, where the funding comes from to support the entire district.
Right.
So that's interesting in terms of the pocket, that 75% of our money comes from state aid
From
directly.
state aid, yes, directly.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of our superintendent?
Absolutely.
Superintendent Llano, could you talk a little bit about the initiative with learning loss? And in this budget, but that's a new initiative that I think is kind of exciting for our parents to know what we're doing to support their children, specifically in K-5 schools.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. One of the greatest challenges that we are facing right now is the learning loss that our students have experienced from starting last March to now. So we're over a year where our schools have been closed. We have been providing top-notch remote instruction, but we know for many of our students, it's challenging. Being in a remote environment is not the same as being in a face-to-face traditional environment. So when we looked at our budget for next year and we looked at our strategic planning objective or area of focus around student achievement, we knew that we had to look at learning loss as a major obstacle in the way of that student achievement. How do we recoup the lost time of a student who had been home for over a year already? So one of our strategies is, we're going to be working with approximately 36 learning loss teachers who will be embedded in all of our K-5 schools. Some schools will have 2, some schools may have 3 or 4, and focused on our early grades, our 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade classrooms, and really making sure that we can provide direct instruction to small groups of students throughout the school day. So the concept is a 12 by 12 is the way we're describing it through the curriculum office. 12 students, 12 weeks. So for a period of instruction, if that's a 40-minute or 80-minute period, we're gonna have a group of 12 students for 12 weeks. We're gonna be tracking their performance. We're going to be remediating the skills that they've lost. We're going to be assessing and monitoring throughout, and then hopefully graduating students out of those 12-week programs. Now, each learning loss teacher will be able to keep multiple sets of 12, right? Imagine maybe 5 sets of 12 or 4 sets of 12 throughout the school day for 12 weeks going through that program. Multiply that by the number of learning loss teachers per school. You might have 2, you might have 3, you might have 4. And in those areas, we're going to be really focusing on the remediation of the skills that are critical to success. Another example, Mr. Ortiz, is going back to our strategic plan. We stated very boldly that every 2nd grade child will finish their 2nd grade year reading on grade level. Now that's a very bold statement, knowing that we've just dealt with our learning loss and our pandemic and the loss of time, right? So we need to recoup the amount of time. So students will be receiving quality first instruction in the classroom by their 1st grade or 2nd grade teacher, and certain select students who are behind will receive additional supplemental instruction from these learning loss teachers for that time, like as I was stating, 12-week window. So it's going to be very accelerated, very dynamic, very challenging for our students, but we need to recoup the time by applying additional programming.
So this sounds like this is additional support. So those students will get this teacher that will support them, but they're still getting their regular instructional support from the regular homeroom teacher.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, this is not a replacement program, it's a
replacement.
supplemental. So it's in addition, we're adding to what would be core quality first instruction from our homeroom teacher. And then we're going to have a specialist come in, this learning loss teacher who's going to be exceptional. And primary focus will be on literacy, but we will also have some math programming as well. But on the literacy side, really a good understanding of what it takes to assist students to become better readers, to develop that comprehension, to develop their phonemic awareness, and the ability to express their ideas, again, through writing, because the connection between reading and writing is essential.
And one of the great things that I think is important in our investment in the budget as we move forward next year in our strategic plan is Parent University. It's so very important for our parents to be supported so they can support the children and the students at home as we're teaching them in the classroom. Alfonso, can you share with us and the audience and the attendees? We have one attendee, Brother Curtis Aubrey, on about Parent University and the launch of Parent University and supporting our parents.
Absolutely. I'll start and I'll turn it over to Mr. Ortiz, because this is one of his projects that he's super excited about. But we know under our commitments and our priorities of parent and community engagement, we needed to invest again in our parent community. And the way to do that is by developing a series of opportunities for our parents to involve themselves in their child's education, and also to receive skills that would help them be better parents and to support their children through our Parent University model. Parent University is a project that we will be launching across the district, where parents will have opportunities to attend a variety of skill-based workshops to develop their skills as adults and as people looking to expand their horizons, and also as parents, their ability to support their students. So Mr. Ortiz, can you round out some of that description for me?
Yes, certainly, and thank you very much for the opportunity. One of the things we want to do is do a survey of our community, because we need to know what are the services that the community wants. And based on our survey, we will then develop seminars, workshops, that we will address the concerns, the issues, the things that they want support on. For example, let's say the parents want information on how to help my kindergarten child with reading. So we may have a series of workshops that will be after school. It might be on a Saturday, and those workshops will be developed by our supervisors, could actually do the workshops. We might have parents that say, well, we have some issues with legal immigration. We want to know how to become a citizen. So we might be able to tap to our community resources, because we have a lot of excellent resources in our community. We can reach out to the Latin American Legal Defense Fund. They can come in and do a series of workshops for those families. Our parents right now, we're doing the whole computer, they need support with computers, how to log in, how to do the stuff. How do I help my child? We might need to do workshops around that. And so the intent is to use the resources of the community, all those organizations, and tap into the wealth that they bring to the school. And together we can then support our children. So that's the concept of the Parent University.
Next question from Addie Lane.
So we talked about learning loss, but we know that the summer is coming up. So after May comes June and July. And so does our budget support opportunities for additional instruction during the summertime? And if so, how does that occur?
And so we are beginning our project right on May 3rd, reopening, bringing our students back into schools, developing positive routines, building our relationships, getting back to what it is to be in school. July 1st, we launch our summer programming, our extended school year programming for our special education students. And then we begin a wonderful combination of programs for across K to 12. We're going to have enrichment programs, robotics, STEAM-based projects, intervention type programs where we'll be working on reading comprehension and skills-based development. And then in our middle schools, we're going to continue with those types of bridge opportunities where we get students to learn about moving from 5th grade to 6th grade, from 8th grade to 9th grade. And then of course we do our credit recovery programs to make sure all of our students remain on track for graduation. So we have a significant amount of funding for our summer program, and many of our items and proposals were actually being board approved on the last 2 agendas for our summer opportunities. It's going to be fantastic. One piece that is under development as well is our connection with the city's recreation department. We will be partnering with the city Department of Recreation to make sure our students, if they have an opportunity to attend an academic program, that we will connect them with one of our city recreation programs, one of the pools. Hopefully our pools will be open over the summer, the different park-based programs that are developed throughout the city. Director Richardson and Rodriguez and I have discussed a couple of times the opportunity to get together to have those conversations from the Department of Recreation. So we are looking to make that connection. Mr. Ortiz, did you have something else to add?
I just wanted to emphasize that this is not going to be, for the most part, we want these to be face-to-face, right? So hopefully by that time it's face-to-face instruction. Our students need that face-to-face instruction. At the high school level, the 3 high schools pull their funds together. Daylight Twilight, the 9th grade academy, Trenton Central High School, they pull their funds together and then they offer in-person instruction for those students who might need a credit or 2 to graduate. They might need a course that they failed, or they may need to be on target. Our goal is to make sure that all our students can graduate in the 4-year period. And so we do provide all those resources during the summer, but it will not be virtual. Hopefully it will all be in person.
I want to circle the next question back to Jayne. Jayne, after we've had this conversation on the investments, having a conversation on Parent University, having a conversation on instructional programs over the summer, are these the similar conversations that you were having with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent in terms of how to craft and put the money together in the budget where the rubber meets the road?
Yes, I think from the beginning, which would have been, I believe we started in October, the superintendent and I in leadership, we said, okay, what do we need for the upcoming school year to ensure that our students are whole, which I mean a well-rounded student, and then where will the funding come from? Because at the time I didn't know I would receive 31 million, right? So when we look at it, the way I look at it, I say, when I look at the superintendent's plan, then in my mind, I'm saying, okay, what is our budget story? Because if I'm looking from an audience or through their lens, I'm saying everyone in the public should see what our budget story is by me going over numbers, because I don't want them to think, oh, this is just a series of numbers and calculations. I want them to look at it and say, this is their budget story, their financial expression of the school district. And they should be able to look at those numbers and reflect all of the district priorities and goals that the superintendent went over. Everything that's in the strategic plan for year 1 that we discussed last night, when we said this is our snapshot, but we said what things were in year 1, and then we're going to move on year 2, 3, and 4. They should be able to see that. They should be able to see where the money is allocated. So then that budget is clear, right? And it really explains, and they can understand that, yes, that money is being utilized to fund my child, because everybody's concerned about their child. And as I'm speaking, we talked about the revenues, but I think we should mention the expenditures, because if you see a money bag and you see $383 million, that's a lot of money. But then you say, oh, 45 million, take that out, that goes to charter schools. Oh, excuse me, take out 34 million, that goes to out of district tuition. Oh, take out, another 48 million, because that's grant funding. We can't touch that, that's restricted. That has a different connotation. Now let's look at salaries and benefits. Oh, take off 150 million for salaries and benefits. Look at transportation. Oh, how much is left? There's 50 million left. When you look at it, you have to look at it realistically, and then you have to be very deliberate and intentional when you're budgeting. And that's why I tell the superintendent, I'm always listening, taking notes, so I can make sure I capture what the board is saying and the superintendent, so it becomes in the district's financial expression, and budget stories, so you won't have to hear all of the other stuff in the community. They're aware. Yes, I'm coming back to the district because I know what they're doing. That's why the presentation last night that the superintendent and I presented, it was very deliberate. It showed every phase. We're paying $19 per student. Their per pupil amount, ours is $19,000. So we just want to make sure that everyone understands that when they look at our budget, and they don't just see a lot of numbers and then they can't decipher what's there.
Addie?
Okay, so I'm really interested in the concept of the learning loss teachers, and the fact that we are actually providing for opportunities for summer learning. And so certainly, so the opportunities for summer learning would be half-day basis. Tell me what's the plan for what that would look like?
There's a couple different combinations, right? So depending on the type of program that a child would like to select, some students we will be steering towards our English language arts and our mathematics type programs. So that could be a 9 to 12 type of program, 3 hours of instruction, up to 4 hours of instruction daily, Monday through Friday, for about a 4 weeks time slot. But we have so many different components to it, right? There's a STEM education piece, right? Then there's also a literacy scholastic supported, exploration of reading comprehension. There'll be a Lexia type of program similar to our after school Trenton literacy movement, application of our programs. And there might be some opportunities to delve into Dreambox and other types of math programs. So we're developing a schedule that will be on our website that students will be able to see. These are all the different opportunities that I have Monday through Friday through the month of July. Primarily, usually we try to pack July with a lot of our academic programs, because once we get to August, we're already full into reopening of school status. So we want to make sure that our programs are kind of concluding in that first week of August. So there will be very detailed ways to register for these courses. Parents and students will have opportunities to select a variety of very innovative programs, such as the National Inventors Hall of Fame program that we saw some videos last year, where students were designing and innovating new concepts, new ways to protect an egg from being dropped out of a building, designing like how to keep it safe, and how to develop reusable, recyclable devices and vehicles that work on wind power. So we have a lot of really cool programs and a lot of focus on manipulation of actual products, right? Hands-on, problem-based learning activities. Here's an issue, here's a challenge, solve it. Here are the supplies that you need to use to create a solution or an innovation of a product to improve upon that practice or that process. And we have invested quite a bit of money into these type of programs, because once you get into that problem-based learning type of mindset, you're practicing your mathematics, you're practicing your language arts, you're learning to create and solve and collaborate with your teacher and your partner students who are in that classroom as well. So you'll be very excited to see how we launch our summer programming. It'll be very exciting. It's going to be well received, as it always is. We always do a nice job with our summer program, and it's always well attended. And this carries on all the way from first grade up to our high school programs.
One of the questions from our panelists, Curtis Aubrey, he asked this question. I think we may have answered this question, but I do want to ask the question to the panel and to you, Superintendent, and also to Jayne. Can we, Wilfredo, can we design a summer schedule for credit recovery and intervention to coordinate with enrichment? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is students should have the opportunity for the arts and recreation along with academics.
I'll start, and maybe Jayne and Wilfredo can fill in. One of the things that we recently had a conversation about is, because we offer so many summer programs, how do we coordinate our schedule so that we don't exclude groups of students from their academic programs, which should be driving the conversation? We also have very healthy summer athletics programs, right? So how do we do both and make sure that we are honoring students who, of course, need to take the field to, learn their plays, their routines, for football, for soccer, whatever it may be, and then also have an opportunity to continue their credit recovery or additional academic programs. So we're developing that unified calendar that I was speaking about a little bit earlier, and we're going to have to move some things around over to some to make sure that our students have opportunities to do not only the intervention, the enrichment, and the athletics. Right, so there's 3 major areas that we're trying to focus on, and this summer you'll see a unified schedule that will allow those opportunities to occur.
And there also, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
There also is money allocated for athletics, because I think we're supposed to have an elementary athletics program this summer, which is exciting, along with middle and high school. Ms. Grady was talking to me about that, and also an arts program. And of course, we have a host of enrichment programs and our ESY, along with our summer school programming. So we do have funding allocated for, as we would say, the holistic child.
That's what I wanted to say. And I also want to just add one thing before we close, because I know that we're getting close to the time, but we've made a huge investment in technology, and maybe Jayne and even the superintendent could talk a little bit about what we've done with technology. We bought like ThinkPads for every single teacher in the district. So what was our investment in technology to support our students, Jayne?
I will defer, because the superintendent knows exactly what we purchased. I know the money piece, but he knows all of the things we purchased. So I would defer to the superintendent on that.
Right. No, thank you. It's funny. We always try to figure out, like, what was that dollar amount that we got, right? And it's millions and millions of dollars,
millions and millions
into student-based technology, right? Our Chromebooks, hotspots, LTE Wi-Fi systems to broadcast our signal throughout the city, headsets, handbags, for all of our Chromebooks so they can be safely transported. For teachers, we purchased ThinkPads, right, and headsets for them as well. We're currently looking at cameras for classrooms, so we can project our virtual instruction to make sure that we have a quality signal that's going out. It's been amazing, the investment that we've put together for our schools. We've even looked at our infrastructure internally in our buildings. Our tech team looked at bandwidth. They tested every single school to make sure that the capacity is there for when we do return, that we're able to stream wirelessly and make sure that all of our connectivity is at a top level. We've looked at just so many different variations. We're also even having partners coming in to invest in us, right? Verizon is providing a multi-million-dollar investment in Trenton with one-to-one iPads for all of our middle school students. This is every 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade student will receive an iPad, plus all the teachers who support them. And our side of the investment is we're making sure that we're having 4 technology specialists work with those schools to support the professional development that's about to be administered. So it's very exciting.
So I don't want anyone ever to say at a board meeting or anywhere that they don't have a Chromebook or they don't have technology or they don't have a hotspot. Please, I don't want to hear that, because we have them, okay? We can provide for every student in the district.
And I will say, Ortiz, with our CARES funding and our Digital Divide grant, and with our in-house funding, we spent well over $10 million just on technology alone. So you're right. No one can say that we're not a one-to-one district for everyone.
One-to-one
students and staff. Students and staff. So yes, we're excited about that.
And as we close out this broadcast with that exciting news, we want to just talk about the Bows, right? So you guys, Alfonso and Addie and you, Jayne, are getting ready to go to a Bows meeting, Board of Estimate meeting. Addie, can you just explain this meeting that you're going to tonight and how it works in conjunction with our board approval of our budget last night?
Okay, so I'm going to start and then we'll turn that over to our BA.
Okay.
However, and of course our superintendent, but however, because of the type district that we are, after our own budget sessions, we actually have to confer with the city to figure out how they are going to support us for the upcoming school years that follow. And a part of that has to do with supporting capital improvement projects. And so just, recently we were able to get some projects passed that we had kind of been in limbo for the last couple of years, but we were able to get those projects approved by the city council. So the Board of School Estimate involves a process where we meet with the mayor and our council liaison to talk about our capital improvement projects and how much the city is actually going to contribute to the school district. And so that happens on a yearly basis. And then that conversation ends with an approval to actually address those needs that we've identified. And so again, it's a process that involves city council. After we have our Board of School Estimate and the players at that table agree, then the players who are involved in the city council also have to agree and actually vote to approve whatever we've said at the Board of School Estimate meeting. So now that's my quick intro. Ms. Howard, there you go.
Okay, yes, we are one of 11 type 1 districts in the state of New Jersey. So with that being said, that the residents of the city of Trenton gave their right, because in Hamilton, they can vote the budget up or down. They gave their right to BOES, which is the Board of School Estimate, which is the mayor, 2 city council members, and 2 board members. They vote the tax levy up or vote it down. And it's only the tax levy. They're not voting on anything else in the budget. It's just the 23 billion, which is the tax levy. Then from that, because we are type 1, then we have to go to them and look at our capital improvement projects, because we cannot have debt on our books. I can't do a referendum. I can't do a bond. Trenton cannot do that. But the city then can issue bonds for us and then pay those bonds down over a 10-year period. Okay, the first 3 years, they don't have to float anything. But then after that, over a 10-year period, then they pay the bonds down for the district. We're always very deliberate in what we give them, because first we have to go to the SDA and then to the state. After they deny the project, then it goes to the city. And hopefully the city will then approve that project. So then we won't have to spend our money that was allocated for students to cover that project, because by that time it's normally emergent, which means an emergency or emergent, and you would have to then do that project. But it is something that only 11 districts do in the state of New Jersey, that the residents gave their rights to BOES, who would vote up or down. We don't have to go to, and that's our public hearing, which is tonight.
I think one of the things, Jayne, I think is important, could be important to the public to understand and connect the dots to that BOES meeting and our budget approval from last night, is that one of the projects that was just approved, which I think hit home to a lot of our residents, is the athletic turf field, right? So that was one of the capital projects that was approved that supports athletics and supports our students. That really hits home to our community, and the connection that BOES and the city council approvals have to our district, as well as other capital projects with facilities and pavement and roofing and things of that nature, and of course our tax levy. So we're kind of at the close. Alfonso, last words. Then our board president, Addie Lane.
Thank you again for this opportunity to be able to unpack a little bit more deeply our school budgets, right? And our total package for the 21-22 school year. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and kind of provide some more context to learning loss teachers, or our school-based youth services expansion to middle school through high school, which is going to be an exciting expansion of our social emotional supports for students. So look forward to coming back next week and continuing the conversations on WIMG Trenton Talks. President Lane.
Okay, so I just want to echo the superintendent's comments to the extent that we are working very hard to get our schools reopened so that our children can actually benefit from in-person learning. We know that some students actually thrived in the virtual environment, but we also know that many were challenged by that environment. And so we're working very hard to get back to that particular in-person learning, and certainly not forget the lessons that we've learned over this period of virtual instruction. And our budget and the whole strategic plan planning process has focused on that. So we have made advances in technology. We're going to use those advances as we continue to push forward in terms of student achievement. So thank you again, WIMG, Mr. Truehart, for arranging this, and all of our guests for today.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Listening to Trenton Talks on WIMG 1300 AM with Trenton Board of Education, our board president, Addie Lane, our acting superintendent, Alfonso Llano, our assistant superintendent of school support, Rafredo Ortiz, and our special guest for the first time tonight, won't be the last, but for the first time tonight, our school business administrator and board secretary, Jayne Howard, doing an excellent job. We love you. Thank you for your time tonight, and get ready for that BOS meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trenton Talks, IMG 1300 on WPHY, Verizon Channel 28 on Thursdays at 11, and tonight at 7. Tune in tonight at 7 for our live recorded broadcast tonight. God bless everyone. Everyone have a good night. Thank you, Curtis Aubrey, our attendee, for joining us today. God bless everyone.
Thank you.